Good morning. Welcome to another Monday morning update with Rozella with Steffani over in Spokane, Washington. Hi, ladies. How's it going?
Hello, hello.
Hello, it's good.
It's good. It's summertime in Spokane. I bet it's beautiful over there.
Not quite summer.
Not quite summer. Okay.
We're in
But
between. We still
still
have that
beautiful.
really hormonal weather where it's really, really hot and then it rains and hails and you might get a little bit of snow in there. You never know. And then it's back to 80 degrees and sunburn.
Yeah.
Be
It's all
prepared for
across the
anything, in
place.
other words. Sounds like
Yeah.
a real estate market. You know what I mean? Be prepared for whatever happens. Little
I see
metaphor
what you
there.
did there.
Yeah, pretty good transition, huh? So speaking
Indeed,
of
indeed.
which, what are we going to talk about today, ladies?
The wonkiness of the market.
And we're going to just kind of go over what buyers and sellers are coming to us as and kind of what we're feeding to them, how we're advising them currently and what to expect with how our market's been. And then also kind of just go over the common questions that a lot of buyers and sellers have been coming with us at.
Sounds good. Well, where shall we start? Questions are coming with you? That sounds good. What kind of questions are we getting these days?
Well, Steph, I've been list heavy and you've been buyer heavy. Should we split that way today?
I always get, how are rates? Are they coming down? I think they're going to come down. And I'm like, oh my Lord, if we all had a crystal ball, duh, we would all be playing the game a lot better, but we're not. And my honest answer to that is always, the market is not predictable. It's never been predictable. And although some people might say that it's going to come down, that's not really what things are showing or looking like. So with that, if you can afford to buy, right now is a good time to buy. But then if the rates do in fact come down next year, then great, refinance. That's the way to hit that one, in my opinion.
I think that's a good answer. Yeah, get that equity. Because what's happening with prices during the same time? Do they ask you that question? What's going to happen with real estate over the next year?
Yeah,
Sometimes.
a lot of people. Oh, go for it.
No, I was just say sometimes I ask that question, but sometimes they aren't really it's so funny. So a lot of people aren't really as focused on the price necessarily as much as how much it is to borrow, which I'm like, you got to pay attention to both because it does matter.
Yeah,
it really
there's
does.
two things in that equation. Exactly.
Yes.
Yes, I think it ties in the question of her price. Buyers are more worried about the rate than necessarily the price right now. But on the flip side, our prices are starting to climb a little bit again. And sellers are asking the question of well, what buyers have money right now? Who has the money and who's even buying? So the prices are definitely selling under where they're listing at with that kind of together. So it's kind of a together aspect, I would say, between the right rates and the price point.
Interestingly enough, I will say that people like buyers, I feel like more recently are paying more attention to the fact that people are price dropping or that houses are sitting, because that always stirs a really big question of well, why are some houses flying off the market and then others are just sitting there? And it goes back to reality and expectations and all the above that was set properly, I think, when people are listing. And so we have a wide range of items that are on the market right now. And some people really just like to test the market, and they're so okay with putting their house on the market just to see because they're so curious, not realizing, I guess, fully that that doesn't always help you, because if you put your house on the market for, say for a summer, and then you take it off and then your next summer hey, let's try this again. We can see that. People can see that. The consumers can see the history. So it then starts to actually almost work against them, because then it makes it seem like there's something wrong with it. And it may not be anything wrong. It just could just be the wrong price. And that's typically what it is the wrong price. And people are, we have expectations or we have fun ideas in our head of well, if I could sell my house for $1 million, well, let's just try it. Okay, well, you still have to be realistic. Otherwise, when you do really want to sell for $1 million and you could sell for $1 million, you probably still aren't going to be able to, because you've now just tried it so many times over and over again. Your value and your worth has come down, unfortunately. So just my opinion.
I will say too is a lot of the people that live here have owned their homes, for 15, 20 years, and the amount of equity that they have in these properties They have hundreds of thousands of dollars in equity. If it's not paid off yet, they owe very, very little. And so people have moved on out of these homes, been renting them out, whatever it may be. They are not in a hurry to get rid of them. But at the same time, tax values are starting to go up. So people are starting to pay a lot more for taxes every year. Home insurance has increased as well. So that has gone up. So people are starting to think like, well, maybe this isn't really worth keeping any longer just because the other costs for the property have now risen to the point where let's try selling it and see what happens. Well, with that idea, we can try selling it. When we're trying to sell something, you have to price it appropriately. Otherwise, it's just going to sit and you're kind of running into what Steffani's saying there. So we definitely have a lot of sellers that are trying to sell properties that are slightly overpriced because they're not in a hurry. They want the most money out of their property. It's not hurting them for it to sit. And so it comes down to just being really realistic with those sellers, whether they actually want to sell the property and what the bottom line is, and just be open and honest with them of and it goes back to what she said, the reality of what is actually moving in our market right now.
Yep.
Okay. Well, that makes sense. So some sellers are unrealistic, others are more realistic, and those houses are moving faster is what I hear here.
Mm-hmm.
Very much. The ones that are selling quickly are the people who are in the position more or less like, well, the economy's gone to crap. We've lost our jobs. We're not able to make the payments, or we're buried in credit card debt. We have 5 kids and everything is so expensive. We can't afford this place anymore that we thought we could. The people are that actually selling and pricing appropriately are the people that are needing to boot, scoot, boogie and move on in life. And they don't have the time to just try to see what happens.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it depends on your station in life and your motivation. Exactly right. Makes sense.
Absolutely. Yep.
Okay, so let's go to the other side of the equation. Buyers. What kind of questions are you getting from buyers, and how are you handling them, and what's that all look like?
So in addition to the rate question, the next question is always going to be, do you think that more houses are going to continue to come on the market for me to look at?
Well, you looked at 8 today. What do you mean?
And honestly, like, I don't mind it because it's funny that she uses that number. I did actually show 8 different houses or 8 different properties on last Saturday. And I don't mind doing it because oftentimes a lot of these houses are so close to each other that by the second or third home, it literally one of them was like, this looks like the last one. I'm like, I know, we got 2 more to go. So it's really fun because you can already know what to expect sometimes, but each house does have a varying option slightly. But it is very telling of the market when you go to these homes and you see so many houses that look the same, but they all have their small little differences. And then the price point of how similar it is. And then you're like, okay, so it's just funny to see well maintained, kind of good maintained, and then so they need some love. And that's just where it's at, I feel like.
I will say yesterday I saw 2 homes with a buyer and they were pretty much the identical home, similar layout, age, everything. The only difference was one of them had a bigger lot. One of them was on 0.8 acres and the other was on 0.2. The difference in price was $100,000.
Wow.
I couldn't justify that $100,000 for a little bit more land in my brain. Like the room for growth is there, yes. But again, the reality of that doesn't make sense. So yeah, you're going and seeing the exact same home. It has a little variation, but the major difference is the price point.
Mm-hmm.
So in a situation like that, Rozella, can someone build their dream shop on that other 0.6 acres they have?
Absolutely. There was a million things we discussed with the gentleman I was actually looking with. His son might build a shop house. You could then rent it out, do an ADU. Yes, the room for equity and growth is absolutely there. However, you're going to start from ground zero. It's an older community. They're all on septic out there. That septic was not permitted for another unit. So then you're going to have to go through the process of having a new septic system put in. And like at that point, that's pretty costly, especially if you're overpaying by $100,000 or, whatever it may be, if you're going to overpay for that lot. So yes, the room for growth and equity is there, but it would take a substantial amount of time, work, and money to put into it to be able to then get that equity out of it. It wouldn't be a quick flip turnaround or anything like that. But yeah, absolutely. You could totally do that. But on the other side, the other lot was 0.2 acres, and you could totally put a shop on that one as well. You just don't have as much room for it. But if you wanted to, you could as well.
So I suspect that you find that your sellers are getting well educated when you do those 8 showings in one day. Does that help you guys out? Because by the time you're done, they go, okay, we know what the market looks like, and they get realistic.
You mean the buyers?
The buyers, I'm sorry. That's exactly what I mean. Yeah.
Do they become more what? Sorry, realistic?
Educated as to what's the market cost, the values are really at for what they're looking at.
I feel like mine are paying attention to it, yes. And then I did not see that big of a variance, but I mean, price point could be different as well. I will say if you're under 500,000, that's where you see a major difference in people's price points. And I will say my buyers are getting smart enough now to also pay attention to read the remarks, because a lot of listings are being advertised incorrectly. I don't want to say falsely, but they're incorrectly. So most commonly is bedroom count. People will count non-conforming bedrooms as their total count. And it's like, but you can't actually count that. It's not going to appraise as that. It's not even assessed as that. And so, and that does make a big difference on the pricing, for sure. And that's where I feel like a lot of agents are struggling with sellers, because sellers are like, I don't care. Others are doing it. I want to do it too. And it's like, but that's not ethically what we're supposed to be doing, because you are at that point kind of bait and switching people to come and look at something that isn't what it is. And I know that there is varying rules and all the things about it, but I think that that's where you see a large fluctuation of pricing differences in home styles that should be similar, but they're not, because of actual differences like that. And I feel like the other thing with buyers is, as they see more things, they're realizing too, Photoshop is like not just for dating websites. Apparently it's also for real estate.
Yes. The photos. I will tack on with Steffani there with the sellers. And I ran it through a scenario like, okay, yes, bedroom count wise, other people are doing it. Doesn't mean that we should do it also. That way we have a competing chance or even a fighting chance to sell the home. Let's say we do misrepresent these properties. It's not really a 2-bedroom. You want it to be a 4-bedroom. Okay, let's misrepresent it. Run through that scenario. Then what happens? You then have a buyer that's hoping for a 4-bedroom home. Your assessor does not have a 4-bedroom home. The county does not have a 4-bedroom home. They have a 3-bedroom, a 2-bedroom, whatever it realistically is what they have for county. Your assessor is going to come in when it's time for the appraisal, and they're going to look at it and they're going to be like, wait a second. I thought I was looking at a 4-bedroom home today because it's listed as a 4-bedroom home, but county only has it as a 2-bedroom, and I'm here. Yes, there's 2 regular, 2 not regular. What do we got here? And at that point, you're going to have some appraisal problems probably come up, because you're trying to sell it for something that it's not. At that point, you have a buyer. Yay, that's great. But then you have to tackle that obstacle, and then that's going to become an issue that you're going to have to overcome. So when you run it through sellers, it's like, yes, I could misrepresent it and try to sell it as something it's not. However, that's not going to really help anybody long-term wise. And it's not going to make the process any easier doing it that way. And that's, again, ethically, we have a lot of ethics within our job and gray areas where you can kind of flounder. But I think it would be important to really tell your sellers, you know, like, we got to kind of stick to where we're at. We can't go into that gray area, because it only creates problems long term.
Yep. Good point. Well, good primer for sellers and buyers. Ladies, are there any closing comments you want to cover that we haven't chatted about at all?
Just to keep shopping, honestly. And if you're not finding what you're looking for, to the people that are like, but is more going to come on the market? Yeah, more is going to come on the market. And I'm okay with people waiting and being a little bit pickier, because they can be. And I feel like that's just a healthy way to approach a purchase or an investment, whatever you want to call this. And if you have an agent that's kind of pushing and pressuring you, well, then they're probably more worried about their bank account than like yours. So go find another agent. Just saying.
You want somebody that has your best interest in mind, that's for sure.
There's plenty of us out there that do have their best interest in mind. And that's another fun thing that we're seeing is like, those are the people, thank God, are still in the business right now. That's what we're also very much so seeing.
Good. The good agents are
Yep.
surviving. Yeah.
They are.
Rozella, what other closing comments you want to add?
I think for sellers or all together, you think they're selling wise or buying wise or all, John?
Whatever you want to close out with is up to you.
I would say the last thing I've really been pushing, like, or letting sellers know heavily is that buyers, like she said, they are taking their time and they are still needing a little bit of extra help. They are very careful with where their money is going and what they're spending their pennies on. So just expect that the buyer you get potentially is going to need some closing cost assistance, and to factor that into a cost, which kind of makes people want to list at a higher price, knowing that people are going to be asking for money. But yeah, I've just been really letting sellers know that buyers are still needing help and assistance with closing costs. So factor that into your net close so that you kind of have a good idea, potentially worst case scenario, what your buyer's going to need.
Yep. So my last little comment, leveraging off what the ladies were talking about, this kind of chats about what we've already talked about in the past, is that it's a bit of a soft market, and that allows for creativity on both sides, and it can be kind of a win-win there. So we've talked about that, but just to summarize, sellers that have a little bit of creativity on their side with an agent that knows what they're doing, like these two agents we're talking about here, can actually achieve more with some creativity in how they may offer costs, like Rozella was talking about, to the buyer instead of a price reduction. And buyers win out there too, because dollar for dollar, it usually makes better sense for the buyer and the seller that the seller contributed to the closing costs rather than a price reduction. They both win. So if you have any specific questions about that in a specific home, talk to these ladies, give a call to myself. We're happy to kind of go over those with you to clarify what that might mean for your situation. Ladies, thanks for your time as always. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
All right, we'll catch you next time on Monday mornings.
All right. See ya.
All right, bye-bye.